Hi, I'm Julie, and it's a beautiful spring day here in Northern California. My husband Pete and I are coaches who help you discover your calling, and we do that through our True North Quest coaching. Quests, Q-U-E-S-T-S, is an acronym. Each letter represents a tool that we use to dig deeper into who you are so you can identify clues to your calling. Today, Pete and I are going to share the first letter in this acronym, the letter Q, which stands for questions. We ask a lot of questions in our coaching. There's no set rule as to the questions we ask because every client is different, every situation is different, but we have 3 big questions. As you get to know us, you're going to hear these questions over and over again, so I guarantee you won't forget them. But I'm going to let Pete share those questions with you today, and I'm going to hit him with more questions as I interview him in this episode. And we have a surprise, more than one, we have surprise visitors that will be with us in this episode. Let's go.
Welcome to Your Best Life podcast, where we help you discover your calling so you can live with purpose and clarity. We're Pete and Julie Morrill, your guides, mentors, and lifelong adventurers, and we're here to help you find your true north. Let's get started.
Okay, well today we've got a couple of our Fox Red Labrador Retrievers. These guys are about 4 weeks old and I think super cute right now. This is one of our favorite ages. And one of the things that we do when we breed and sell Labrador Retrievers is we talk to a lot of people, and most people think that they just want a dog. But almost everybody has a story about what they want and about their old dog and all that sort of stuff. So what we've found is to sell puppies, we have to be good at asking questions, because most people think, I just want a puppy. But really, they have a vision for how that puppy is going to play into their world, how it's going to interact with their grandkids or the kids, how it's going to help them in a hunting or be a fishing partner, how it's going to go to the hardware store with them. So we want to know a lot of what that dream is, because we're trying to fulfill that dream. And in some of that same way, when we ask some of our big questions, we're going to try to ask you, how are you going to fulfill the dream that you have for your life? We call that your life calling.
Well, we know that I explained that quests is an acronym, and that we're talking about the Q in Quest today, which are 3 big questions.
Yeah.
Tell people what those 3 big questions are.
Sure. So the first one is, who am I? It seems like kind of a basic thing, and you can identify yourself a whole bunch of different ways, but really that's where we kind of fill in the acronym. What's my unique story? What's my emotional grid? What's my skills? What's my what's the T?
Oh, true heart passion.
True heart passion. And then what is my selfless gift that I'm going to give to people? That's who you are. And those are easy questions to ask, but we're going to really ask them. We're going to really dig in. We're going to spend a good session on each of those who am I questions to really kind of identify that. Because we think once you identify who you are, you really begin to understand your life calling a lot better.
So, Pete, what are some good questions that you like to ask coaching clients?
Yeah, so the questions that help us ask those who am I questions, and maybe kind of bait people into a thought process, is, if you had $1 million and you only had 2 years to live, what would you do? Because it's going to poise them into a direction of things that they've always wanted to do, but they didn't want to do because, 1, they didn't have the resources, or 2, they didn't feel like it was the right time. And what we're saying, you got 2 years to live, this is the right time to live to your maximum. You got no resource limit. So that's a good question. I think another good question is, how do your friends reflect you back to them? And it might be a good thing to say is, why do you like to hang out with me? What is it that you really think is fun about my personality, or about the way I approach life, or about some of the things that you've heard about me say in my story. So those are some. You also ask a lot of good questions. So what are some of the questions that you like to ask?
So, one of my favorite questions is it's a heart passion question.
Hmm.
It is, what made you really excited? What exhilarated you about an experience in your childhood?
Mm.
Um, the reason that's important to me is because I have some key things that happened to me in my childhood that really pointed to my calling. I didn't know what it was, I didn't figure it out till
Yeah,
later.
yeah,
But I just think what happened in your childhood, your highlights in your childhood, really, really tell you a lot about your calling. Another favorite is just why. Because when I coach somebody and they tell me they're doing certain things, or they have certain habits, I just keep digging deeper by asking the question, why? Why do you think you do that? Why do you think that really was so meaningful to you at that time? Questions like that.
yeah. Why do you have your job? What
Hmm.
is it that drew you to that job? Or what are the hobbies
Hmm.
that you've invested in, and why have you invested? Why do you enjoy those hobbies?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the importance of asking good questions in coaching?
Well, the main thing is you allow people to hear themselves answer deeper questions. So both you and I are teachers. Teachers like to talk a lot, right? If we really boiled all their talking down and saw how much was really remembered, and often it's the things where they've allowed their students to interact, that they've allowed their students to answer some questions. So if I ask you, why did you, as a child, spend so much time? I know you did this, so much time pretending to be a teacher,
Hmm.
right? And getting all your friends lined up, and they all had roles, but the main role that you need to have that you needed to orchestrate was you being the teacher. Well, it might be a good,
That's a good clue.
yeah, it's a good clue, not so subtle a clue as what you thought you should be doing. Yeah.
Yeah. Here's another question for you. Why do you think people avoid hard questions?
Yeah, because they don't have the answers. That's the main thing. And mainly they don't have the answers because they just haven't really thought. We're working with our son now to get him to plan his future. And it's really hard for him because he doesn't know the answer. And we're trying to get him to say it's not so important that you know the answer to everything, it's that you think about what the answer could be. In other words, there's no right answer to how are you going to invest your time and energy. There's no right answer. But people unconsciously make that decision every day by going to a job or investing in these relationships. But if we said to them, why do you feel less fulfilled when you do this than when you do this? Then it starts to get them thinking about, oh, maybe I'm not investing my time well. So they don't like deep questions, but I think they do like deep questions. But you're changing the script, right? Socially, it's not appropriate to say those deep questions. So sometimes we have to say, okay, we're going to change the script. We're going to ask some questions that are a little bit deeper than what you're normally used to asking. So if we're working with a group, we're going to introduce that idea right away. And it becomes easier because the culture says, okay, it's okay to start probing into those deep questions.
I think I think a lot of people are afraid to answer hard questions because they think they might have to radically change their
Mm,
life.
yeah,
And sometimes in coaching we find out you already are fulfilling your calling. It may not be your job, it may not be the main thing you're doing, but you're still doing it in this capacity. So we show people where you're doing it
yeah,
and how to expand on it.
yeah,
And they don't
yeah.
have to radically change their life necessarily.
Correct. It's kind of like asking people to put a budget on their time. If you ask people to make a budget of their money, all of a sudden they become very self-conscious of everything that they spend.
And a lot of people don't like to set a budget because they're afraid. I'm gonna have to change a lot of things. I'm gonna have to
Right.
cut.
But really, a budget is just gonna, you probably are already somewhat living on a budget, but it's probably just some few tweaks to say, oh, you could do a lot better. And that's kind of what we would like people to understand is we're probably going to not radically change your life, but if I can just get 3 to 5% more of your time, talents, and treasures focused towards your life calling,
Mhm.
that's going to expand, or it's going to find some doors
Yeah.
that then is going to turn into 10% or 20% of, and maybe it's time, and maybe it's talents, and maybe it's treasures, and maybe it's all of those things. But we're not, um, see, the thing about true north and magnetic north, the difference is the small deviation. And that's what we're trying to do is help people make that small deviation to be really living in their true north, versus, oh, I'm just going to go wherever it seems like it's appropriate right now based on the circumstances.
So that's most people, I think. It
Yeah.
just seems like whoever we coach, a lot of people are just kind of drifting and hoping that they end up doing what they love or what they're called to do, but they just are kind of clueless. But I can't condemn them because that was me.
Yeah, intentional living is takes work, and it takes work, in my opinion, more at the outset, and then it takes, okay, I'm going to make some decisions to start living more in the path of my life calling.
Mhm.
And for some people, if we go through this course, some people really will make a radical change, and but the majority will make small changes, and we would hope that they would revisit their life calling, once a year, once every 6 months, and say, okay, how could I tweak things a little bit more? Most people are generous haphazardly.
Mhm.
Maybe they give to their church, maybe they give to a charity, maybe they give to this school fund because people ask them, right? Wouldn't you like to give to something that you really
Mhm.
care about? Now, we're not saying that you got to give 100% to that, but wouldn't it be smart to think about being generous with your finances in something that really motivates
Mhm.
you rather than 600 things
Mhm.
or 15 things that they're not
Or
that.
spontaneous things that you just feel guilty about. So
Yeah,
I'm just going to give money away.
right.
Why not
The
be more
grocery
strategic?
stores are now starting to say, do you want to kind of give
Hmm.
this much? You give your change.
In restaurants.
And I want to tell them, you know what? I have important
Yeah.
causes that I give to, just
And there,
because,
there
and
are priorities.
yeah, and just because you are giving me an opportunity doesn't mean that I'm not a generous, and I decline that opportunity. It doesn't mean I'm not a generous person. It might mean I'm a more intentional person.
Mm-hmm.
I want to see the results of what I give
Mm.
generously. Time wise, we generally do that more so. We pay a little bit more attention to what we're going to give our time to. It's funny, people are very protective of their money, but they'll give their money somewhat haphazardly.
Mm.
Time,
Interesting.
most people aren't as haphazard with their time. Some are, but most of the time, people are saying, oh, do I really want to invest my time and energy in that? And then talents is where we would really love people to think about, okay, this is who I am skill wise and experience wise and wisdom wise. And most people undervalue the talent they bring. And so then they end up doing something for an organization that really doesn't ask much of them.
Mm.
For example, churches are really notorious for
I was just
getting
going to say that.
getting people to work with kids and
Hmm.
people to greet people at the door,
Hmm.
which are both okay. They are somewhat skill
Or be
focused.
parking lot
Yeah,
attendants or
parking lot
something.
attendants. And my frustration with churches is they don't ask
Hmm.
this businessman to really think about how could we as a church generate funds
Hmm.
through investing. They just put that as aside. There's a church in Washington, D.C. that's bought a whole city block because they want to influence the world's leaders,
Hmm.
and they've invested financially in this place that's right across from where many of the world leaders meet.
Mm-hmm.
And they've done it because they've got
I know what you're
businessmen
talking about.
that
Yeah.
think about the impact that that's going to make. And they're going to do business somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
But this church has a vision for impacting world leaders. And so now they have a kind of a added purpose. Um, and now a lot of businesses are saying, okay, we can recognize that people in this generation, the young generation that's coming up, want most of their business to be done with businesses that
Oh, right.
they agree with morally, they agree with in terms of how that business is treating the environment.
Even our purchases, we don't even want to purchase something that's
Right.
not in line with our cause.
But we spend so little time thinking about what
Yeah.
is it that I can
Right.
give to the organizations through
Interesting.
my skills and my abilities and all that sort of stuff. And honestly, many of these organizations don't do a good job of kind of paving a path for people to give their skills and abilities to them. It's one of the reasons I enjoyed being a camp director, is because as a camp director, we ran a farm, we raised fish, we had a ropes course, we had horses, we had a child care facility, we had a restaurant, we had daycare, we had all kinds of
That's a
recreation.
lot.
So it was very easy for me to tell people, hey, if you've got a skill or ability, I can fit you in to what we
Mm-hmm.
need. And it was we'd allow people to put hands to some of their passions. Because most people are passionate about kids, but we were passionate about helping kids really live their best life. And it was fun. It was fun to see adults become childlike in their desire to give.
I just had a thought. You know how you said you would like to be like a city manager?
Mm-hmm.
You were a city manager
A
in a way.
community
It
manager,
was
at
like
least. Yeah, it
the
was a
camp
little.
was like
Yeah,
a small city.
right.
So no wonder you would like that kind of a thing.
Yeah, yeah.
It's funny.
And what's also interesting, you bring that up, but government doesn't ask professional people to volunteer. But those professional people probably would
Mm,
if people would give a vision
mm. For the city?
for the city or for whatever this project is
Interesting.
going to do. Maybe the city is going to turn most of their buildings solar.
Mm.
Okay, so
Why not consult with some
they
solar
need
people? Yeah.
engineers, and some of those people would probably do it for free if
Hmm.
somebody challenged them that
Interesting.
way. Yeah.
That's government efficiency, but we won't get into
Yeah,
that.
right. That's one of the nice things about being a nonprofit is we needed people to volunteer or else things didn't get
Oh,
done.
right.
And when you need that, then you say, okay, who is good at that? And so you start thinking creatively.
Mm.
This guy's good at
Ow.
chewing.
He just is chewing a little too hard there. So, what are some, I have to switch subjects a little bit, but what are some of your favorite questions that you ask clients and groups?
Yeah. So obviously it depends on what the talk is and where we're going and that sort of stuff. But I think probably what I like asking is, what are you passionate about? Where do you get to release that passion? I try fairly quickly to find out what makes a person tick. But you can't ask them that question, what makes you tick? So you gotta see when you're talking to them, you gotta sense when their tempo in their conversation goes up, when their excitement goes up,
Hmm.
when they talk for 3 paragraphs and they're talking
Yeah.
with great passion about it. Then you can. I was playing pickleball with a guy, and we were waiting our turn to play, and we were talking about when we were next playing. This guy said, "Oh, sometimes I go up on Monday nights to play volleyball in Ashland." And then I said, "Is volleyball your main sport?" And then he went on for 3 to 5 minutes about how he played volleyball in college. He loves volleyball. He coached volleyball. All these things. I had no idea that he was a volleyball player. He was a semi-pro volleyball player. Obviously, he was passionate about it. Obviously, he enjoyed doing it. Obviously, he had skills in that. But he showed me, he gave me, he was basically telling me, I spend my schedule going somewhere else to play volleyball instead of pickleball on this night. So I could tell. So now I just knew that there was probably a little bit of gold there. And then he just told me, "Oh, now this is what really I get excited about." So you've got to listen, I think, well, when you're talking to people. But what are you passionate about? And then you've got to tell people, but let's not just talk about the people in your life. What are the things that you do that you're passionate about? We're all passionate about our kids or our spouses or our friends. Let's talk about the things that you do that you're passionate about.
Well, one of the things I have noticed is when you're interviewing somebody, whether it was for the camp, hiring staff, or for Marble Mountain Kennels, hiring staff to work for us here, I will eavesdrop and I'll hear people kind of answer the questions, and you can tell, oh, they're not really into this job. And then you ask, we're good at asking questions. You ask certain questions like, what gets you excited? Or sometimes you'll say, what was your last job? Or what was a job that you really liked in the past, or something like that. And all of a sudden they light up and it's like, I really love this. I really love that. And it has nothing to do with taking care of dogs
Yeah.
or something. And you go, I think your calling is more towards that other thing that
Yeah.
you really light up about.
Well, one thing that we ask is what it was your proudest moment. That really reveals people.
Yeah.
And you can't say it's when your kids got some award or something like that. What was your proudest moment? And then have them describe the moment. Or what are some 3 aims or 3 goals that you have in life? And they'll tell you kind of, okay, this is pretty important to me. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So sometimes when we're preparing this stuff, you have applied this to yourself. And then you've asked AI to be your coach. so it's funny that a computer process is sometimes life coaching you. What's the pros and cons to that? There's got to be some drawbacks, but there's probably some real pluses to it as well.
I will tell you, I tried using AI for weight loss coaching.
Yeah.
Ouch. And it was actually really helpful at first because it was asking all these key questions about what my routine was, what I ate, and what I could change. And, it offered all these great tips on do this, do that, and gave statistics and was really good about making me think introspectively about why I'm making the choices that I am in food and exercise, and maybe not making the best choices. And that was all good. However, the cons are that I didn't stick with it. There was no accountability to a real human
no
person.
Yeah.
Right. So there was nobody nagging me, which is what a coach does. We're paid to nag people. I always think that's so funny, but
well, you can get AI to nag you a little bit.
Yeah, but it's not
but
the
you can
same
just
because I
blow it
don't
off.
feel
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Exactly. I don't have the, I'm sorry to say, guilt factor of I don't want to let my coach down. I don't want to report that I didn't quite reach my goals this week. And so I didn't care.
Yeah.
So did it work? No. I was a failure at losing weight with my AI coach. So yeah, I think that the stakes are not as high.
Yeah, probably. But the nice thing is AI is objective. And in some ways, every coach that you have can't be as objective as AI. AI has some comprehensive thinking too, right? They don't just take input from one source. They're going to take input from.
I agree. I use AI a lot for a
Yeah.
lot of different things, but for weight loss coaching, it was not. It was helpful, but it didn't help me succeed because it couldn't get on me and say, "Hey, Julie, did you eat well today?" Well, it does ask that because I prompt it to ask me that,
Yeah.
but do I care that much?
Yeah.
Not
Well, you
really.
get excited when it
I
says
do.
positive things to you, but you
However,
don't care that much
if
when
I
it.
talk to a person, I feel like, oh, I'll work a little harder at that. I'll be a little more serious. And if you're paying, obviously, then you're really going to care more. Ooh, but you can pay AI apps to help you too, and that might motivate you a little bit more. Higher stakes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we use AI for discovery in
Mm-hmm.
helping people find their life calling, but we don't use it in coaching as much. In other words, we're not going to recommend that once you find your calling, that AI is your only source. We would encourage you to find accountability within some circle. Um, and we get paid to coach people to improve their lives, make their lives more intentional. And so we're also going to ask deeper questions when we start hearing the same thing over and over again, because we're going to start recognizing either excuses or tendencies to. A lot of times the tendency is for people to diminish their value,
Right.
and
You're feisty.
AI and will be a positive talker. You've had it evaluate some of your writing, and you've gotten very
Super helpful.
encouraged. Yeah,
Yeah.
but
Because
when
I do feel it's more objective than a person who may not want to hurt my feelings.
right, right. But at the same time, it is AI isn't going to be as good as an accountability partner. I think is what we've concluded. Yeah,
When we're in a coaching session, you and I with a couple or a small group, again, I want to talk about the spontaneity of the questions. And I'm going to ask you whether I should even talk about this, but I will pray, honestly, and I think get questions that I wouldn't normally ask.
yeah,
You are, I think you have a gift of wisdom. So you know already what to ask. It's like you just know based on the person and you can read a person. I will
yeah,
pray and get, oh, that's a good question, kind of like that. And I don't want to say like I'm psychic or something crazy like that, but sometimes the questions I ask seem on the divine side and just exactly what I needed to ask.
yeah. And I think we've been in sessions with individuals and with couples, and I knew that you were probing in the right direction. So all of a sudden I get quiet, but when I'm quiet, I'm observing more, right? How does that person respond to that question or whatever? You're probably trying to think of the next question.
Mm-hmm.
And that quietness and that observation sometimes is really helpful. But it's also really helpful that I don't have to come up with the next question, because at that point I can maybe surprise them and myself by an insight. And sometimes I think it's helpful to say things really clearly
Mm-hmm.
that they've been saying, or they've been trying to
Mm-hmm.
say, or they've been a little bit hesitant to say, and just say, it seems like, and then just say the truth
Mm-hmm.
and let that just soak in for a second and say, am I on track there? Or am I off base?
Yeah.
And let
Wow.
them
You do that a lot.
confirm whether that truth is really good. And maybe the whole session was for
Mm-hmm.
that one statement to be ring true in their life.
Yeah. This is where you and I are different. You are definitely more direct.
Mm-hmm.
You will know what this person needs and you will just go for it and just say, I think you are this.
Yeah.
I a lot of it's from my training and coaching. I ask a lot of probing questions to help that client
Right.
come up with the answer. And sometimes you're like going all around it, all around it. Come on, just say you can get it, you can get it. Because I know what they should say,
Yeah.
but I want them to discover it. So either way, it works well. It seems like almost the timing works so well because I'll go around and they'll be thinking. There's a lot of silence in our coaching sometimes.
It can be.
hmm
Yeah.
Where the clients are just sitting there thinking, huh, I never thought about that before. Let me think.
And that's what we want them to do, is we want them to think about the reasons for them choosing to do something that's less than them a lot of times.
Right.
I think we're challenging them with the idea of, are you investing your life well? And so when they're choosing to do things that are less than their calling, we want them to see that that's a choice. Most people don't feel like it's a choice.
Yeah.
One, because they don't know what their calling is, it's not clear enough to them. And two is, well, I've got to make money, or I've got to do this, or I've got to do that, which some of that is true. But if you knew that this was the thing that would last, then you might spend more time
hmm
figuring out how to do that more often.
When you were a camp director, you used a version of quests
hmm
to know so that
To
you
get
knew.
teams to
Okay,
recognize
right.
each other's strengths and
hmm
weaknesses and all that. Yeah.
I just think if more businesses did that, or more churches did that, and other organizations did that, they would find what people's gifts are and put them in the
Start to
roles.
massage their
hmm
position into,
Yeah.
because most everybody has a job that has some of their calling, their elements of their
hmm
calling in it. And maybe the job itself is largely about a paycheck for them, but there's still parts of
mm
that job. For example, there might be some nurses that, I've just talked to a nurse fairly recently, and I think you'll remember this conversation. She got into nursing because she wanted to care for people,
I know what you're talking
and she couldn't
about.
because they throw so much paperwork
Paperwork.
and so much busyness. And then she got into hospice nursing.
Yeah.
And she says, I think it's my calling.
Mm.
And because it allows her, so nursing was the general skill, right?
hmm
Her education pointed to nursing, but nursing itself drowned out
hmm
her calling until she got into hospice calling, which is basically interacting with people that are near death
hmm
and really making that a very healthy chapter for them.
mm
And I think she probably revolutionized the reason she goes to work,
mm
right, in the morning because of that change. Maybe
Nice.
she was just a regular hospital nurse that was kind of responding to whatever the chart said, right? That's what you have to
Yeah.
kind of respond to. And unfortunately, nursing has become more of that. And she realized she was more into the engaging on the deep level.
mm
And when the people saw her as a caregiver that had time and could help them go through this stage in their life, it was off the charts
mm
how she changed her whole perspective on nursing. And I think that's really good. And there were times when I was a camp director where I was in budget meetings and I
mm
was doing a lot of things
Not so fun.
that wasn't me. And so what I needed to do, and sometimes did well at this and sometimes didn't do well at this, is I needed to basically have people that are good at budget writing and all that sort of stuff do 90% of that. So I could do 10%, which is envisioning and
mm
and resourcing, because budget is both, right? It's both record
hmm
keeping and it's evaluating, and it's got to have vision behind it, and it's got to have we can resource this person to do this with this program if we just allot them $12,000 more in
Hmm.
funding. We could help their vision come alive. So that part of budgeting I liked, and that part of budgeting I was good at because I was good at saying a lot of people were good at saying this is what we spend, and I was good
Mm.
at saying, now, I don't think we should spend as much here and we should shift here because it's more crucial to our mission. And so critical thinking as it comes to resource management was my strength. We've got one
He's a
very
little
active puppy and
feisty, and this one
one
just
puppy
wants to
that's
sleep.
just, oh,
Oh, except now
don't
he
make
won't come.
fun of me. So,
One of the things I noticed is when I was teaching, I love teaching. I like
mhm,
the creativity of it. I liked lots of things, but my calling wasn't actually teaching. It was the coaching part of
mhm.
teaching. I didn't find that out till years later, but yeah, it's kind of like the nursing, just trying to figure out any occupation. What part of it is your calling, maybe?
And recently you've interacted with a job where it was coaching people to become better communicators.
Mm.
And that got you really excited because you were going to teach
Yeah,
them how to be better teachers,
yeah.
right?
Professors,
And that
actually.
was pretty darn close to your
I know.
calling. And of all the jobs that you've talked about, it's one of the ones where you said, I really could get into this. So unfortunately, didn't come
I don't
available.
know. They haven't told
They
me if I
haven't
got the
made a
job. I
decision
don't
yet.
think so, though.
But all of a sudden, the motivation.
Hmm.
We were recruited to become hosts in Alaska for a job where I would pull one of the person's visions was that I would help them introduce new outdoor adventure
Yes.
recreation and change a culture, which is a big, if you look back at the chapters that
It's
I
like the
was most
perfect job
excited,
for you. Yeah.
it was always outdoor adventure. It was always people, and it was always changing the culture to really make this outdoor adventure much more than just an adventure.
And it's something that they're struggling with in their organization,
Right.
their business. Well, you love that.
I
If they're
love to
struggling with
influence.
something, right,
Yes, I want
you
to
want to help.
solve the problem of that situation. And again, that job didn't come available. But as
Yes.
soon as I heard about that job,
Mm.
then I realized, oh, this is a real good possibility. So, oh my
This
goodness,
one's not really on camera right now.
no, but a super cute
There he is.
face. Yeah, huh? Can you show them your cute face? Huh?
Yeah, I know we could go on and on talking.
Yes,
This has been really, I think, really enriching, even for me. I really like having these talks. And what's cool is you and I have been married almost 18 years.
right.
And even though we're doing this podcast and talking about these these topics for our audience, I like talking about them with you. It's
Yeah,
just fun.
well, because it's our calling, right?
Yeah.
And we found that out um, several times when we've been driving. All of a sudden, we're talking about True North and what we want to do
Right.
next, and we get invigorated and start talking with much more passion and much more intentionality,
Hmm. Yeah.
and our desire to do this podcast really spawns out of our desire to, we've got something that will really change people's
Hmm.
lives, and we don't feel like it's right for us to keep it
Just
amongst ourselves.
or just with a small group of people that
Right.
just happen. So this actually is something that we should explain to you guys out there is that we do coaching in person if you want to come to our place. We used to have a B&B, but we don't have it anymore. Um, so what we do is we have extra rooms. We have a really large house with a total of 4 bedrooms, but one is like a loft with a couple of beds. And so we ran a B&B out of our upstairs. What you could do and what people do right even
Yeah.
now is they book to come stay at our B&B and coach with us
And play with
and
puppies.
play with puppies. Exactly. I forgot. Yeah. This is a lot of the reason why people come actually to play with these guys.
Puppy therapy.
We always have puppies, it seems like. We are not a puppy mill. We actually have a lot of partner breeders. it's a long story, but so the mama dogs are not
We
here
just
at our
have a lot of
house,
puppies.
and they have their puppies in their homes, but occasionally they'll bring the puppies here because they don't want to take care of the puppies at their house anymore or something like that. So yeah, we have puppies for you to play with if you want to come and hang out with them.
It's also in a beautiful place you can't see, but behind us is Mount Shasta, which is one of the most beautiful places in California. And just we're only 30 to 45 minutes from the California-Oregon border. And there's a cool little community called Ashland. And Ashland offers a lot of what I would consider artistic stimulation. They've got the Shakespeare Festival, which is what they're most known for. But then there's also outdoor recreation of whitewater rafting and fishing and hiking and
Pickleball.
mountaineering and pickleball. Not exactly an outdoor adventure activity, but is a recreation. Yeah, good golf courses around here, good restaurants and all that sort of stuff.
So Ashland is one of it's actually the top date location for us.
Yeah, by far.
By far.
Yeah. Sometimes it seems like it's boringly the top.
Because we go there so often. But the biggest draw is Lithia Park, which is awesome. I'll have to show some maybe video clips for you guys so you can see them. It's just such a gorgeous park. And there's lots of hiking there and really nice trails. Like the creek, Lithia Creek that goes through there is amazing.
So we do couples coaching, we would do family coaching, we would do corporate coaching, and really what we do is we put you through
corporate coaching.
Put you through a process of helping you understand yourself, ask these big questions: who am I? And then what's my life calling? And then the coaching part comes. That's the discovery part, and the coaching part comes in. What difference will it make? And we would probably love to be on an ongoing relationship with some of the people that we coach and just say once every 6 months, let's have a session and let's say, okay, what difference is it making? Why is this working? Why is this not working? What is it that you're seeing as an obstacle? Is it as big an obstacle? I think coaches largely help people believe in their potential and help them overcome things that they see as obstacles. And that's what we want to do.
So we gave you a big part of our coaching is asking those 3 big questions. Who are you? What is your calling? And what difference will it make? Those are the 3 big questions for you. But if you want to dig deeper, meet with us and talk with us and we'll coach you through whatever questions come to mind depending on your situation, because you're unique.
Yeah, we'll set up a framework and then we'll begin to coach you towards how to accomplish some of the things you want to accomplish.
So,
good.
I think that's good.
Yep.
It's a wrap, but it's been fun.
Yep.
And you got to hang out with these little guys for a little while.
And the sun was a little warm, and now we've got a little bit of cloud cover, and that's made it nice. Has that one always been the busy one, or did they change?
This one has been the busier one,
Okay.
but I kind of woke him up more. Every time he started falling asleep,
this
I
one
kept waking
woke
him
up for a second when we were talking about him last time, and then he just
I didn't really let this guy sleep, but I think he was happy not sleeping. So yeah, actually, if you want a Labrador Retriever, we have some of those as well. So yeah, good to talk with you. Thanks for meeting with us today.
We want to take a moment to thank our sponsors. Today's episode of Your Best Life was brought to you by True North Quests, helping you discover your calling so you can live a life filled with purpose. Find out more at tnadventures.org, where you can book an appointment with a calling coach, learn about upcoming True North Quest workshops, and more. And by Marble Mountain Kennels, where exceptional Labrador Retrievers are bred and trained for adventure, companionship, and service. Visit mmkennels.com to meet your new best canine friend. And by Julie's Creative Classroom, providing fun educational games and digital products for students in Julie's online Creative Classroom TPT Teachers Pay Teachers store. Thank you for joining us today. Until next time, remember your best life starts with knowing your calling and finding your true north.